This weekend, unplug. Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. To find the forest nearest you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Living Full Out with Nancy Solari. As a successful motivational speaker and trusted life coach, Nancy knows how you can live the life you want regardless of the challenges you face. Although she's legally blind, Nancy's mission is to inspire others to overcome obstacles and live life full out. Call in at 800-333-0001 to ask Nancy for advice on topics such as relationships, finances, business, health, and more. Just call 800-333-0001. Once again, that's 800-333-0001. And now, here's Nancy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Living Full Out Show. I am Nancy Solari and excited to be here with you today. We are going to be talking about communication. Now, we all need to communicate, whether that be verbally, written, or even body language. How we perceive to others what we're trying to say. How can we best communicate our thoughts and make sure that the other person understands, the level of passion, need, or desire for what we're saying. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you have any questions of your own on how to best communicate to another person what you're going through or your thoughts or passions for something occurring in your life, do give us a call. That number's 800-333-0001, 800-333-0001. And we're going to be having inspirational guests in our next segment as well, Daniel Wendler, and he's going to talk about his journey with Asperger's, and that is on the autism spectrum, but with Asperger's, it even comes with social awkward moments, not really understanding how to connect with people, how to communicate with people. So he's going to be sharing with us his journey on how he did his own research, his own discovery on how to develop relationships. And also, if you have any questions about today's show, feel free to go to our website at livingfullout.com. You can hear today's show and all the recordings of past shows on our radio page. And lastly, we always want to hear from you. We want to know, what is it that you got out of today's show? How did it inspire you? How did it motivate you to take action in your life? And if you have an inspirational story that you would like to share and you perhaps would be a great guest on our show, again, do reach out to us. You can email us at connect@livingfullout.com. Again, connect@livingfullout.com. So you have all the goodies there to kind of get you going. And again, jumping back into our show today, communication. It's interesting. Being legally blind, I can't see what people are doing. So body language for me is not necessarily one that I can turn to in terms of understanding someone's maybe thoughts or maybe how they receive what I'm saying. So a lot of times people can see their eye contact or body language. That's not anything I can do. But what I've learned is to really choose my words. And that's one of the focuses that we're going to be talking about today, is choosing your words, how to best convey what it is that you want to say, assuming that body language, eye contact, none of that can be an asset to you. How can you take what you're trying to say and deliver it in such a way that it's clear to the other person? That's our focus. We're going to actually go to the phone lines now and check in with one of our callers. Hello, welcome to the Living Full Out Show. Hi, welcome to the show. Hi, thank you for calling in.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering how I could help my family cope with my grandfather's death that just happened like 2 days ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Grandparents, grandmothers, grandfathers, they're precious. Who in your family is having the hardest time?
Probably my aunt. Before my grandfather died, she went off the deep end and it's destroying my family. She's choosing to get drunk at bars and falling asleep in her car to there's a whole bunch of different stuff.
So as her niece, do you have a close relationship with her?
We're not really close, but our whole family is kind of like a tight knit family. We'd do anything for anybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
sometimes we have to meet people where they are. Okay. So I'm not saying, go take a nap in her car with her. I'm not saying get drunk with her. Okay. But I'm saying that sometimes when somebody is in a place of depression or they're very, very sad, when somebody else is talking to them, it sometimes is like they're talking at them, almost pointing a finger. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. Or just get over it. Or, there's a lot of things that we do to try to force people to jump to a different stage of grieving than they're ready to go to. And you don't also at the same time, you don't want to coddle the person because you want to help move them to that next stage. There's going to be several stages of grieving, and she's clearly in the first stages where it's devastating. It's like a punch in the stomach. And so what I would recommend you do is connect with her in a way that you feel she would deliver it the best. Do you know if she is more of somebody who would respond to a letter, an email, or a phone call?
Probably a phone call.
Or in person. In person's an option too.
Yeah, either like a phone call or in person.
Okay. And I would choose in person if you can. And, I think it's great that you're calling in to figure out how you can help. And sometimes it just takes one person to go to her and not tell her how she should be feeling, not telling her she's doing anything wrong, but just going to her, literally holding her hand if you can. And even if she's drunk and she's, either very, very moody and lethargic, or if she's hyper and trying to be more in denial, to find a way to just slow her down and say, I'm going to give you a hug. And it's attached with nothing, but I'm here for you. And what you want to try to do is, rather than you do most of the talking, you want her to do the talking. You want her to, even if she mumbles about random things, let her ramble. Okay. Eventually, you want to guide her to talking about, your grandmother's passing, and the thing is, or grandfather or grandmother.
That was my grandfather.
Grandfather, I'm sorry. Okay, so you want to guide her to talking about your grandfather, and get her to talk about positive things. How did she grow up? What were some of her most favorite moments? What you want to do is get her out of sadness, get her out of denial, and get her talking about the positive times with her dad. And that's going to open up a whole new can than she's probably going through right now. It'll allow her to start to vent and talk. Is that something you can do?
Yeah, I can do that.
And make it positive. And even if she's having a couple cocktails or even if she's on the couch completely depressed and lethargic, you can still sit beside her and you can say, tell me about my grandfather. Tell me about how you grew up. Tell me some stories about him I don't know that my mom's never told me. And that will help move her to the next stage of grieving. Okay?
All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in, and we'll be thinking about you. I'm sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Her question is perfect. What do you do when you're trying to help somebody and you kind of feel like you're walking on eggshells? You're not sure quite how to approach them. Again, you just want to let them talk. Sometimes in life, we talk too much. And the benefit in communication is the listening. When you listen, you really understand what somebody is going through, what their thought process is. Maybe they're being realistic, maybe they're not. But you're going to learn a lot by letting them talk versus you giving them advice. We're going to go back to the phone lines again. Welcome to the Living Full Out Show.
Hi there.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for calling. How are you doing today?
Good. I just had a question about networking.
Yes. What's going on?
Well, I'm pretty quiet at my job, so I just wanted to see if I could get some advice how to make networking easier for myself when I'm in a professional setting, but it's harder for me to put myself out there.
And actually, quite a few people, I've had many clients who have come to me with this over the years. When you're with somebody, I imagine, you're the one that just kind of listens, right? You're the one that's kind of listening to everybody else talk. Do you ever feel like you want to pop out there and say something, but you don't?
Yeah, I'm just nervous that I'll say something I'll say the wrong thing.
Okay. And what would happen if you said the wrong thing?
Well, my boss she can be a little bit judgmental, so I'm just worried about her thinking that I'm not qualified.
Okay. But have you ever taken a risk in life?
Yes.
Okay. And when you took that risk, how did it go? Did it go well or not well?
Yeah, it generally goes well.
Okay, good. It's the same thing here. You have to take a risk. If you don't stand up for yourself in life, if you don't contribute to conversations, you're just kind of allowing yourself to be a little bit paralyzed. You're not allowing yourself to thrive and be who you are. And the thing is, you may have so much to say, so much to deliver. When you're not speaking up, everybody else loses. And do you know why they lose? Because they lose hearing the talents of you.
Mm-hmm.
What if there's a whole conversation going on and everybody's filling up the air with conversation, but what you would be adding is a solution? Or what you would be adding would be something that makes them go, oh, that makes sense. If you don't pop out there and say what is burning in you to say, the people who lose are the people in that conversation because they're not getting you. They're getting the physical you, but they're not getting all of you.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Okay. And then also by putting yourself out there, and if you say the wrong thing, you say the wrong thing. You just gotta take a chance. Because what if you say the right thing? What if you say something that makes your boss go, wow, I didn't realize the depths of her. I didn't realize how creative she was. I didn't realize how in tune she was with what we're doing. Let's promote her. Right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So if you put yourself out there, sure, negative things could happen. Sure, people might judge you. But I think the rewards are well worth the risk. So I say you go out there in the next conversation, just go for it. Just put it out there.
Okay, yeah. I definitely do have to try that.
You will do great. I believe in you. But thank you so much for calling in. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great day. So
right,
everybody,
bye.
when we come back, we're going to be with Daniel Wendler, and we'll be right back after this break.
Dad, this is fun. I didn't think I'd like kayaking.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, but I think it's time to head back in.
Okay. Can we come back?
Sure.
Tomorrow?
Let's check with Mom. Hey, be careful getting out of the boat.
It's a kayak, Dad.
I'm gonna return the kayak. Just make sure you have everything.
Yep. Can we walk home?
How about a
Taxi!
233 North Maple, please.
It's a short fare from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a neighborhood park or green space near you. Also, find fun activities to do like boating and biking or camping and hiking, plus much more. It's all right in your naturehood.
Best day ever.
A public service announcement brought to you by the Ad Council and the U.S. Forest Service.
Chances are there'll never be an emergency ever again. But just in case, let's talk about a plan.
Okay.
Who is going to grab the go bag?
What's a go bag? It is a bag we do not have that is filled with things we really, really need in an emergency.
Guess we won't have to worry about it then.
Well, this is great. I am so glad that we don't have a plan.
I know.
Winging it is not an emergency plan. Make sure your kids know what to do during an emergency. Who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
You take your 6-year-old to the playground. You watch her go down the slide, then run over to the swings. Another mother strikes up a conversation. You take your eye off your daughter for just a few seconds. You look back at the swings. And she's gone. Your heart drops into your stomach. You jump up, your eyes searching. You cry out her name.
Lily? Lily?
From the top of the slide, you hear a voice.
Mommy, watch me.
Every parent knows that feeling. Imagine if she were actually abducted. Go to wirelessamberAlerts.org. Sign up for free Amber Alerts on your cell phone. When an Amber Alert is issued in the areas you've chosen, you'll receive a free text message. If you spot the vehicle, the suspect, or the child described in the alert, call 911. Sign up today at wirelessamberAlerts.org. A child is calling for help. This message brought to you by the Wireless Foundation, the U.S. Department of Justice, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Living Full Out with Nancy Solari. A professional motivational speaker, Nancy can help you overcome obstacles and start living full out. Call in with questions live at 800-333-0001. Once again, that's 800-333-0001. And now, here's Nancy.
Thank you for joining us. This is the Living Full Out Show, and I am Nancy Solari. And today we're talking about communication, how we can best strengthen our communication with others, and even in some respects, develop and polish our own social skills, kind of putting ourselves out there, learning how to better communicate. And our inspirational guest today is going to not only share with us his inspirational story, but give us some valuable tips that we can use to move forward in our lives. So Daniel Wendler actually grew up with Asperger's, and that is on the autism spectrum. And I'll let him share with us more about what all is entailed in that. But he dealt with social awkward moments, growing up as a youngster as well as through his adult life. And so very much I'd like to welcome Daniel to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on.
Hi. You know what? It's so wild because this little boy that grew up with all these socially awkward moments could not be more different than the man I'm talking to today. But I know that there were some very painful moments along the way for you.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. It's so strange for me to look back at some of the photos from my childhood and just remember all of the struggles and pain that I had, and then compare it to my life today. It's a very, very big change.
Huge change. And with that, I'm super proud of you for being able to make that leap. And I know that took you doing a lot of discovering of your own of different ways to socially connect with people, which we'll get into that a little later. But Can you first of all share with our viewers, what is Asperger's and how is that related to the autism spectrum, just so we have that technical definition?
Sure. So Asperger's, it actually is a diagnosis that no longer exists. In the latest version of the diagnostic manual, they did away with it. But in previous versions, it was on the autistic spectrum, and it essentially referred to a high-functioning version of autism where you still had social impairment, you still had some of the other quirks of autism, such as sensory sensitivities and a focus on one specific interest, things of that nature, but you didn't have some of the impairments of, like, for instance, intellectual impairments that can sometimes come with autism. So nowadays, they don't diagnose people with Asperger's syndrome. Just everybody gets autistic spectrum disorder, and then they just sort of specify where your functionality is. But back in the day, it was a version of autism that indicated a lot of social troubles, but no intellectual troubles.
Okay, and thank you for sharing that with us. Kind of like lets us really have that in our minds as you share with us your story. So really, let's take you back to childhood. That's really when you started to discover just how intimidated you were by other children, how you felt like you weren't fitting in. What's the first memory that comes up for you?
Yeah, I think, I think one memory that just really captures it very well, just sort of how much I wanted to connect with other children and how little that worked out was one day when I got off my school bus in elementary school. I saw a classmate that lived in the same neighborhood. He had also gotten off the bus, and so I decided, I'll go up to him and I'll invite him to hang out. It's after school. We can have some fun. So I start walking after him, and he starts to walk faster. So I start to walk faster. He starts to walk faster. And, of course, he was just trying to get away from me, but I didn't realize that. I didn't pick up on the social cues. And so I kept following him until eventually he turns around and he punches me in the stomach, and he yells, "Get away from me." And all I wanted was to be friends with him. All I wanted was to connect and invite him over to my house. But he, for some reason, I didn't understand the social cues. I didn't understand what I did wrong. All I knew was that I had tried to be friendly, and instead I'd gotten punched in the stomach. And that was very typical of the kinds of interactions that I had as a child.
You know, it's interesting, being punched in the stomach, and I know at one point I think you were even kicked off a swing. What happened there?
Yeah, so the swing story, that was me sort of trying a different approach. I was like, you know what, I'm going to try. I've been bullied. I'm going to try to stand up for myself. And so I was on a swing at recess, and somebody comes up and they say, "Hey, get off the swing." And I'm like, "No, this is my swing." And I was very calm. I was very pleasant. I was trying to use all of the skills that I had, but again, ultimately, it wouldn't work. And they just decided, you know what, I'm just going to kick you. And then they just, kicked me. I went off the swing, and then, I had a big boot print on my back, and it was to the point where my parents had to come and get me from school that day because of that violence.
It's already hard enough sometimes being a kid, just trying to fit in, and children tease each other, or your friends one day, you hate each other the next day. It's just the way it is growing up. How did you find the confidence, the energy to even go back? And I'm just curious, if something were to happen on a certain day, like the swing, or that kid punches you in the stomach, does that emotion sit with you just for that day, and then the next day you kind of shook it off and you were a happy-go-lucky kid again, or did that kind of stay with you?
Yeah, so I think the emotion stayed with me for a lot of my childhood. I remember feeling as though I was sort of like this cup that was, filled to the brim with water, and any extra water, anytime you jostle the cup, it's going to spill out. And so it was sort of like I was constantly at my limit, and any little thing could set me off, which is why I would sometimes have, meltdowns, or I would start crying, or, a little thing would cause me to sort of freak out. And that was because I was under so much stress constantly that it made it very difficult. And that really lasted until I was able to, my parents took me to a counselor who was able to give me some medication that kind of helped take the edge off of that a little bit, and then that sort of drained my cup and allowed me to engage with the world and handle some stress. But up to that point, you're exactly right. It's not like you have an experience and the next day you're fine. It all sorts of builds cumulatively until eventually you just feel very, very overwhelmed, and like anything can push you over the edge.
Now, were the teachers supportive? Did they understand the cues that maybe you just had some differences from the other children in your ability to socially, communicate with them? Or what was the role of your teachers?
Sure, that's a good question. So I didn't get my Asperger's diagnosis until high school, and so in elementary and middle school, my teachers did not know that there was anything, that I had any diagnosis, or that there was any reason for my behavior. And so I think I had some teachers that were very kind, that sort of would, they would give me extra support, or they would, adjust assignments a little bit in order to kind of accommodate my uniqueness. But there were other teachers that just sort of took my square peg and tried to fit it in a round hole, and really, I think the biggest thing that they would assume that like my quirks or my mistakes were deliberately like malicious. So for instance, I remember one test that I took where the teacher had made a typo on the test. And on the test, I wrote like a little correction. I said, "Hey, you made a typo here." And the teacher found that very disrespectful and, called my parents, forced me to write a letter of apology, because to the teacher, I was defying their authority. I was being a really rebellious kid, and all I was trying to do was just be like, hey, I was just trying to help the teacher out. I was like, hey, your test has a mistake, and I didn't realize that would maybe come across as inappropriate. So some teachers, they didn't, they misrepresented my motives, and just because I was acting differently from the other kids, they assumed that I was bad.
That's a tough moment, because then who do you turn to? Thankfully, you had your parents. Now, the day finally did come when you got this diagnosis. Did the psychologist know right away, Asperger's, that's what he's got? Or did you have to go through a lot of testing?
So I only went to one therapist for testing, and to my parents' credit, they had done a lot of research on their own, which was difficult because this was back in the 90s, and so autism was not as much in the news as it is today. But my parents had done a lot of research. They had found autism as a possible cause, and so then they had taken me to a psychologist that specialized in that condition. And so that person, they saw kids with Asperger's every day, and so they were able to just, very quickly diagnose me. So I fortunately did, I think I had to do like 1 day of testing, but fortunately I didn't have to go to like specialist after specialist. They were able to figure it out pretty quickly once we knew where to look.
And what did it feel like for you to finally have an answer, finally a reason for why you were acting out the way you were?
To me, it was such a relief because I always had this fear that there was just something about me that was bad, that just for some reason, something inherent to me made it so that people rejected me, that I was flawed in some way. But then what I realized with my diagnosis is that there was nothing inherent to me that was flawed. It's just that I lacked certain skills. Like, and you can learn skills. Like, if you're a bad cook, you can go and take a cooking class. You can get better at cooking. And I was like, I can do the same thing with social skills. Like, I'm not doomed to forever get, kicked off swings and punched in the stomach. I can try to overcome this. It's not inherent to me. And that was just such a relief.
Well, I can only imagine. As we go along into the next segment shortly here, I want to find out more about how things were for sports for you and dating for you and just overall learning and how you developed your social skills. So if you can definitely stay with us, into the next segment, I'd like to go ahead and further this conversation. Okay, so stay with us into the next break. And everybody listening, we're with Daniel Wendler right now, and he's, again, talking to us about Asperger's and getting that diagnosis. But what does that mean? What was it like growing up? And really, how did he go on to flourish from there? How did he go on to figure out ways in which he could better communicate or connect with people and make friends? And today, you would never know. I mean, there's just talking to him, he communicates very well and very clear. So stay with us. We're going to be coming back. And it's really important that as we consider communication, not just Daniel's story, think about your own story. Think about who in your life today you would like to strengthen communication with. Do you have similar patterns to Daniel? Maybe you don't have Asperger's, but are you feeling like you're kind of outside looking in? We want to take today to build your motivation, to empower you to take action in your life, to learn those skills so that you can build those relationships and be able to communicate your thoughts. We'll be right back.
Ahoy there, matey. How's the fishing this morning? Shh! You'll scare the fish. Oh, nonsense. Fishies love the safety pirate. Now tell me, I see you're wearing your life jacket, and that's mighty smart of you. But have you taken a boating safety course?
I have. Now, could you please leave?
So you know to stay alert by not mixing alcohol and boating, don't you?
I do.
But I bet you didn't know it's dangerous to speed on the water. Now, did you, Turbo?
Actually, I knew that.
Well, smarty pants. You seem to know it all, don't you?
Yep. Maybe even more than a safety pirate.
Watch your mouth, sailor!
When you're out on the water this year, make sure you're being safe. Learn the boating rules and watch out for other boaters.
And remember to boat smart. Boat safe.
A message from the National Safe Boating Council.
I want to change some things. I want the moms where I live to have childcare they can trust.
I want to make sure my little brother and his friends have a safe place to play.
I want to help more kids graduate from high school.
Help more hardworking families learn how to budget and save.
I want more of my neighbors to have access to health care.
Want to make a difference? There are so many ways you can. Help create opportunities for everyone in your community.
I want to change what I see around here.
United Way is creating real, lasting change where you live by focusing on the building blocks of a better life. education, income, and health.
I mean, I just want to see more smiles on my sidewalks.
Reach out a hand to one and influence the condition of all. Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. For more, visit United Way at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Living Full Out with Nancy Solari. As a trusted life coach, Nancy will help you overcome setbacks and embrace all life has to offer. Call in with questions live at 800-333-0001. Once again, that's 800-333-0001. And now, here's Nancy.
Hello again. I want to personally thank you for listening today. This is the Living Full Out Show, and I'm Nancy Solari. And we're right now in the middle of an interview with Daniel Wendler. And he's telling us about his story, his journey with growing up with Asperger's. And the moments that he had that felt so socially awkward, but at the same time, how he grew from those moments. Because we're all going to have those moments in life that are just those gut-wrenching moments where you just wish you could crawl inside of a cave. But those are also the moments in life when we really define who we are, where we really stand up for ourselves, where we get the most resourceful to find out the answers to move us forward. And that's exactly what Daniel did. After he got to his diagnosis, he decided, I'm going to learn what I need to do so I can better communicate with people. So I'd like to welcome Daniel back to the show. Hello, Daniel.
Hello again. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. All right. So you were just telling us all about growing up and obviously, getting bullied, getting punched in the stomach, getting kicked off of swings. And then the day came that you finally got your diagnosis from your therapist that you had Asperger's and how that really just kind of brought the pieces of the puzzle together for you and why things were unfolding the way they were in your life. Now, after getting that diagnosis, did everything just automatically get better, or how did the first couple of years of high school go for you?
Yeah, no, it would have been nice if a switch had been flipped and everything was great from then on out, but it was still very challenging for quite a while. My mother tells me that, my first couple of years of high school, she would come to wake me up for school in the morning, and she would put her hand on me to wake me up, and I would just be covered in a cold sweat because of how anxious I felt about, going to school and having to be in that social environment. So things were still very challenging. I still experienced some bullying. I still experienced some social isolation, especially in my first couple of years of high school. And my diagnosis I received just before starting high school, just to give that context. But the thing that was so different... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just share with us, if you can, the story about the cafeteria, because that is so interesting because we can all feel the pain of that moment for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, even after my diagnosis, things would happen. I would go to the cafeteria and there would be, a table of my classmates, and I would say, okay, I'll sit with them. And then I sat down at this table, and then they would all stand up and move to another table. And, just as sort of this uniform rejection of me. I wasn't even doing anything. I wasn't even saying anything. I was just sitting next to them, but they had all decided that I was such an outsider that they couldn't even sit with me. And so I had those kinds of painful experiences, and that did really cause me a lot of pain. But the thing that was different about now that I had my Asperger's diagnosis is I knew that I sort of had a fighting chance. I knew that I sort of had a game plan. And so, every day that I would go to school and I would have a social interaction that didn't go well, or I would have an encounter where I would be teased or bullied or whatever, I would go home and I would try to figure out what went wrong and try to figure out the skills that I needed to do better the next time. So I would, read books on social interaction, or I would talk to my parents, or I would, sort of brainstorm in my mind, what could I do differently? What will I try different next time? And so instead of just feeling helpless and like, this is a problem and there's nothing that I can do about it, I felt, this is a very serious problem, but I've got some options. If I really work hard at this, I can get better. And that was the thing that I really held on to as kind of a lifeline.
Well, I love that. You were taking control. You didn't know what that looked like. You didn't know what the answers were, but you were just going to kind of test it out and try to weave your way into, better communicating with your peers. Share with us a little bit, how did sports go for you? Did you do any team sports growing up, or did you do individual sports? Or
Yeah, so my parents had a rule when I was growing up that I had to be involved in one creative outlet and then one athletic outlet, and that generally did not go very well. So I did, growing up, try all of the team sports, soccer, baseball, cross country, swimming, all of those things. I tried them out, and almost without exception, at least in childhood, I did not have any success in any of the sports because I wasn't that athletic, and so it was a challenge. And then just the social dynamic of the team sport, like I didn't tend to get along with my teammates, and so I would be out on the soccer field, and then my teammates would kick the soccer ball at me to try to hit me, and that obviously is not very fun, and made me feel like I just don't want to do this.
And so you were pretty much forced to do the sport, even though you knew you were going to get bullied for it. I would wake up in cold sweats too. With that's painful.
It was pretty unpleasant. I mean, I do, I like looking back, I do have some memories of my times in sports that I am grateful for, but I paid for those memories with a lot of painful moments as well.
And how did things go for you in terms of dating, connecting with people on a more intimate level?
Sure. So I think, at least in high school, things did get better for me in college, but at least in high school, when I first started becoming interested in girls, things did not go well, because I just really, I really was not very good at telling whether or not girls were interested in me. And so there was one instance, for instance, where I wanted to invite a girl to go to a party, and so I called her, and she didn't pick up, and so then I proceeded to call her again another 10 times in a row, because I'm like, maybe she'll pick up this time, and of course, that just probably that probably came across as creepy and extreme and all of those things, but I just didn't realize it. I was just excited about this girl, and yet, I was calling her 10 times, and therefore probably blowing any chance that I really had with her.
And is that because with Asperger's, it's kind of like an obsessive compulsive side then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, I think that you can have people with Asperger's that really will focus in on one thing and really make that their main interest. I do think, though, that in my case, it was just that I was, a 14-year-old guy discovering, girls for the first time, and I think that any guy in my shoes, at my age, at my level of development, would have been similarly sort of obsessed with this girl. I think that I just had even fewer skills than the typical teenage boy for making those relationships work.
Well, I can think of a lot of teenage boys that would do that without Asperger's. So, I think actually you were probably right in the zone there. But that is one of those things where you can kind of test the waters in high school, but when you got to college, were you then able to more clearly communicate with a little less, I guess, obsessive side?
Yeah, I think by the time that I'd reached college, the years of study and practice that I had done in social skills really paid off, and I was able to, communicate in a more calm way. I was able to understand better what other people expected of me, and I did have, it took me until my senior year, but my last year of college, I did have a wonderful, romantic relationship with my first girlfriend that I still look back at fondly, and, we ended on good terms and all of that. So I did finally make it. It is, for all of the 14-year-old boys listening in, wondering if they'll ever make it, like it does get better. But it sometimes takes a while.
You just gotta, as a female, we kiss a lot of frogs to find our prince. I guess you kiss a lot of something else to find your princess, but anyway, but that's very interesting. So obviously Asperger's is no longer what is a diagnosis that therapists give out, but in terms of autism, what should we know? Like if somebody has a diagnosis as a child and they're on the autism spectrum, and maybe it's a nephew of someone's, or maybe it's their own child, or maybe it's somebody they meet at a party, and you're informed that they have autism. What's the best way to communicate? What's the best way to relate to them that kind of brings it to their level so they can thrive?
Sure. So I guess there's two thoughts that I have, and they're both pretty related. And the first thought is to really remember that people on the autistic spectrum, they want connection just the same as everybody else. Obviously there's a range, just like there is with other people, but most people that are autistic, like they want friends, they want relationships, they want to connect with you. They might not really know how, or it might feel kind of stressful or overwhelming to them. But they still want it. They still want to connect. And I think that if you sort of remember that, and remember that both of you really want the same things, that can be very helpful. And I think also I would just encourage you to look beyond your first assumption and of what somebody is doing, and really ask, like, why are they doing this? Because a lot of times when somebody on the spectrum does something inappropriate, it's because they just don't know any better, or because they're overwhelmed, or it's not because they're trying to be inappropriate. They just really can't help it, or at least it's very difficult for them to do something different. And so really going in with a lot of compassion and a lot of willingness to say, I know that this is hard for you, I'm going to extend some grace, I think that can lead to some really good relationships. If you're willing to just sort of, offer grace for some of their quirks and some of their rough spots, I think you can find a really wonderful person beneath that wants to connect with you.
And we really all have quirks. We all have our own internal condition or limiting beliefs, or in your case, you had your diagnosis of Asperger's. And so, I really want to thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing your story with us. And it's very relatable. I wish more kids and more adults weren't diagnosed with autism these days, but the numbers are going up. And I think that your story gives a lot of parents hope that their children will be able to evolve, will be able to have a really developed adult life like you have. And so thank you very much for being on our show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I just want to say as one final thing, like, I think that in my experience, it's not just people on the spectrum that can struggle socially or that can struggle to connect, but I think this is a human need. Like I run a website, improveyoursocialskills.com, and many of
Daniel?
the readers that will write me. Oh yeah,
Daniel,
sorry.
I'm so sorry. We're going to be going to a break here, so I didn't want to cut you off mid-thing, but I'm glad you got your website out. And I just really want to thank you again. And everybody, that was Daniel Wendell. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great day. And everybody, when we come back, we're going to be taking your calls. Again, that's 800-333-0001. We'll be back.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah.
You remember that ball game we went to a couple years ago?
Sure.
And how you didn't have enough cash for 2 hot dogs, so you walked with me on your shoulders until we found an ATM? And then when we got back to our seats, we never saw the hot dog guy again.
Well, I don't remember all that.
Yeah, that was an awesome game.
You never know which moments will be the ones they'll remember forever, so take time to be a dad today. Learn more at 1-877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Medical mistakes claim tens of thousands of lives every year. The healthcare community is working on it, but you can help. When you communicate with your doctor, when you ask more questions, you reduce your risk of suffering a medical mistake. Doctors can't answer if you don't ask. Help reduce your risk. Questions are the answer. Learn the 10 questions you must ask. Visit www.ahrq.gov. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, and the Ad Council.
I'm getting a catcher's mitt.
I'm getting ice skates. I'm getting a devastating flood.
Adults are generous. We're even giving kids global warming, but we can still reduce greenhouse gas pollution. Go to fightglobalwarming.com. Brought to you by Environmental Defense, the Robertson Foundation, and the Ad Council.
The following commercial is sponsored by feedthepig.org, an organization devoted to helping you save money. We will not entice you with messages like,
Lois,
lowest prices in town. Dealer approved, certified pre-owned.
No obligation consultation.
Nor will we brag about our
Huge selection. Enormous variety.
One-stop shopping.
Everything under one roof.
or promise.
Prices reduced up to 75%.
A sale like this can't go on forever. Factory liquidation.
Financing options available.
We will offer no contingencies like
See store for details.
Prices and participation may vary.
Legal exclusions apply.
No purchase necessary.
or try to convince you that our product will give you
Leaner, tighter abs in minutes.
Perfect smile. Porcelain veneers.
Freedom from those painful, embarrassing bunions.
because we simply want to help you spend smarter and save better. Log on to feedthepig.org. Find the benefits of saving for every stage of life. Brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
To live full out means to strengthen our communication skills each and every day, to take risks, to step out there and let people see and hear all of you. It's about knowing that your voice, your words, what you're trying to communicate is worth it. So if you're ever feeling as though you're not being heard, it's time to evaluate, find resources, and take action so you can have stronger communication skills.
You're listening to Living Full Out with Nancy Solari. As a certified life coach, Nancy can help you to overcome challenges and start living full out. Call in with questions live at 800-333-0001. Once again, that's 800-333-0001. And now, here's Nancy.
Okay, here we are. This is the Living Full Out Show. I'm Nancy Solari, and today we're talking about communication. That was an excellent interview with Daniel Wendler, and just really appreciated all the lessons that he had to share with us about all the pain he went through, all the awkward moments. But then he got resourceful. He decided, you know what, I'm going to crack this code. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to find a way to communicate with people. And he didn't, hit it out of the ballpark every time, but over time, he got better and better and better, and that's what living full out is about. It's not a snap, and then all of a sudden your life is perfect, and we look the way we want, we talk the way we want, we've all the relationships we want. It's truly a journey, and so that's what this show is about. It's about helping to move you forward each and every day, or at least every week when you call in or when you listen in. So we're going to be taking your calls again here shortly. But when I think about communication, I know for sure that it's sometimes kind of funny. Like when we choose words in our life that we're going to say, like a lot of times my coaching clients will say, okay, Nancy, I'm going to try, or I hope, or, well, I don't know, maybe. You want to find the words that are going to empower you. Try is not an empowering word. Maybe is kind of a lukewarm, kind of weak word. You want to find words that really fly out of your mouth with passion. You also want to take away the shunts, the kunts, the wunts, anything N''T, just throw it away because it doesn't serve you. You want to find very intentional words. I want, I'm excited, I love, I really want to. Words that convey passion, words that it's almost like when you say the words, you can just feel the energy coming outside of your mouth. Also, when you're talking to people, whether it's on the phone or in person, smile. I think people, when they're in social awkward moments or when they're stressed, or if like one of our callers from earlier today, she's more quiet and reserved, and she's wondering how she can, better communicate with people in a group setting. It all goes back to just having confidence in what you're going to say. It's not about getting it right, because sometimes some of the things that we say wrong are funny. Sometimes they start a whole new realm of conversation than you even intended to do. So if you don't put yourself out there, you're never going to be able to have that opportunity. When I see my coaching clients and they come to me and they're frustrated because they feel like they're not getting their message across, they're not, in some cases, like let's say they're applying for a certain job, they don't feel like the interviewer gets them. Or let's say they're in a relationship and they're having the same arguments over and over again. They don't feel like their partner is hearing them. It's really about assessing, okay, what am I trying to say? and what are they hearing? So rather than having this one-way battle where it's you talking all the time or you not talking and all they're talking, you want to really listen to what the other person is saying. So I'm going to give you an example. If you're in a relationship, let's say with a friend, intimate relationship, parents, you name it, and let's say you're kind of having a debate or even an argument, there's power in listening, because then you can hear what the other person is saying. In your mind, as they're talking to you, you can weigh out what it is that you want to say, and does that really relate to the compromise of the conversation? Or is that your ego talking, or is that you're trying to force something on the conversation? Taking that moment to kind of digest that in your brain, it's a learned skill. So I'm not saying that everybody can do that, but just listening more, and then before you talk, take a breath and then talk. Because sometimes we just launch out there with the immediate thought that we have, and then we can't take it back. And that's where kind of the fear comes from. But when you take that breath and then you launch out there with what you want to say, it usually comes out more eloquent, more assertive, more confident. So keep that in mind when you're in your next conversation. All right, we are going to go back to the phone lines. Welcome to the Living Full Out Show. Hi, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's beautiful outside today, so I'm outside.
Oh, love it. Well, how can we help you today? What's going on?
I got a question about, my relationship. I've been dating my girlfriend for about 2 years now, and like some of her habits are getting irritating, and I'm starting to get a little bit impatient. I think that I get to the point where I get really a little bit angry, and I kind of like, not yell per se, but I kind of snap on her. And like, what could I do to kind of decrease those moments of pent-up aggression towards her habit, that making sure I don't get to that point where I, talk to her in a certain way.
You don't want to snap, is that what you're saying? You want to try not to snap if you can help it. Can you give me one example of something that just makes your skin crawl?
Well, we're kind of cohabitating together now, and I like to have stuff in a certain order. So, for example, if she puts her shoes in the doorway when she comes home, instead of putting it away, and I kind of trip over it without paying attention. I've heard myself once doing that. So it's like, and because this week does it for like a week, and I'm like, you need to move the shoes here and here and here, and making sure I don't get hurt, or it looks kind of out. Everything looks disorganized, and I'm kind of like a clean freak. So I'm like, I wait like a week before I say anything, and it comes out with me talking over her, then her listening to what she has to say.
Well, what you're actually saying is very valid. I mean, the thing is nobody wants to trip over shoes. In fact, I've had that same argument in past relationships as well. So I get that. Do you have a place for shoes to go near the front door?
No.
Okay. So
not at this point. I have a place in the room, which is not far away from the door, but.
Right. So one of the ways to better organize is to find a compromise. So you have to find a compromise for both of you as to what that looks like. So, for example, other people that I know who have had the shoe issue, because others have, you got to make a compromise that maybe she can't remember. Maybe she's just busy and she can't remember to always take her shoes off right at the front door. Or maybe she can't remember to put them away. But maybe the compromise is, when you take your shoes off, can you put them up against the wall? Any wall. Pick a wall, any wall. But at least they're out of the way. And a lot of people have issues with people who have water bottles. Like people take the top off, they forget to put it back on. Yeah. And then you tip over the water bottle, all the water comes out. It's the same thing. Everything is kind of a compromise. But the thing is the things that your girlfriend is doing, what I want you to get is that it is no flaw of hers, meaning that we all have our quirks. And I wonder if she were to call in, she'd probably have her own list for you as well. The thing is that when we think about the fact that we all have these quirks, it's really about managing the conversation, finding that compromise. Now, when you do make that compromise, like let's say in the example of the shoes, if you both agree, okay, when you take off your shoes, put them against the wall, okay? If she makes that agreement, she goes, you know what, I can do that. Okay. But then after you make that agreement, you have to put a consequence to that agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say she doesn't do it. In advance, you've already said the compromise. The consequence is going to happen, right? And make it a severe consequence. Okay, here's the deal. You made me a promise that you're going to put him against the wall, right? Yes. Okay, so if you don't do that, what is something that will be a consequence for you to do that? She might say, "Oh, I'll cook you dinner." Well, that might not be painful enough. Pick a more painful consequence. Okay, if you don't do that, then it's your time to clean the toilet this week. Nobody wants to do that, right?
No. No.
All right. Okay, if you don't put your shoes by the wall, you have to massage my feet for a half an hour. Depending on how good looking your feet are, she may or may not want to do that, right?
Right. So when you said that I can make the move for myself as well as I don't do it, then
it's gonna go both ways though. Okay, so this has to be a meeting of the minds. Okay, everybody bring their quirks. Everybody bring the things they don't like about each other. Maybe each of you get 3 items, just so we don't have too much of a list, or maybe 2 items. Each of you bring 2 things that make your skin crawl. And then each of you, together, you agree on the consequence. So there's going to be some things that you might do that make her crazy too. And there's going to be a consequence to that as well. So the thing is when you come together and you establish what the irritation is and you establish what the solution's going to be, if that person, you or her, does not hold up to their end of the bargain, in comes the consequence. But it has to be a consequence that's painful. Okay? But see, at that point, you're involving each other. And in some ways, it can be almost playful, right? All right, look whose shoes are in the middle of the floor. The toilet's looking pretty gross. Go have fun. Here's the brush, right? You want to have fun because you do love her. You do care about her. Now, if it extends beyond that, well, that starts to cross into disrespect. That starts to cross into not being a team player. Right? And at that point, you have to evaluate if this is someone you want to spend your whole life with. Okay? So for now, I say we go the fun route. Pick 2 consequences, pick 2 irritables, and have fun with it.
Definitely.
All right? But thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So, communication can be fun. Here's the thing. I want everybody to remember, well, it may be kind of serious, like, oh gosh, how can I communicate my thoughts? Or I want to do well in the interview, or these social moments are awkward, and how do I represent myself better? Get past the stress of it all and try to have some fun with it. Laugh at yourself, be playful, because they're never going to go away. We're always going to have those moments. But that is part of living full out. So, thank you everybody listening today. We'll be coming back next week with another inspiring show for you. I want to thank our entire Living Full Out team here. We have Mindy and Stephanie and Hannah and Rich and everybody here to support you. So, here's to you living your life full out. See you next week.